Blog Talk Radio.
Archangels, ghosts, and Bigfoot, oh my. It's just another night for Supernatural Girls. Real stories, real answers to life's biggest supernatural mysteries. And now, for another exciting interview with paranormal experts from this world and others. Here's your host, paranormal researcher Patricia Baker, on the one, the only, Supernatural Girls.
Welcome, everyone, to a very exciting show tonight on Supernatural Girls Radio. I'm your host, Patricia Baker. I am here with my co-host. She is fighting back from her surgery, doing extremely well. Patricia Kirkman, PK, how are you doing tonight?
I'm doing extremely well. I have parked my little walker, and I'm on a cane as of today. Ooh.
Hey, that's terrific. God. Yes.
Oh, you betcha.
I'm going to have you talk to the audience for a few moments while I take this call from Dr. Gallagher.
Sure. Well, it's going to be an exciting show for us tonight, that's for sure. Dr. Gallagher has so much information to pass on to us. It's not even going to be funny. In fact,
yeah, you show up on the board and then you're able to hear the show, and I'll bring you on.
Okay, I can hear you, Patricia.
I know, and Dr. Gallagher he just needed some further instructions on joining us. So, anyways, this is going to be a show where you got to fasten your seatbelts. We have the most amazing guest tonight, a board-certified psychiatrist, and he is going to be talking to us about exorcism and are demons real? We're going to find out all about that this evening with Dr. Gallagher. He's going to join us in about a second, and I'm going to have him just wait. Hello, Dr. Gallagher. You joined us live on the air, and we're going to just make a couple of announcements, and then we're going to bring you onto the show with us.
Okay, great.
Anyway,
hello.
Yeah, so it's a pleasure to have you. So, PK, really quick, I know you took a look at the numbers of the word demon, which I thought was very interesting. It has its own vibration to it.
Well, I think what's really interesting is demon and devil both have a 9 vibration. And 9 is a very universal number. It's the best of times or the worst of times. And as we well know, devil and demon is the worst of times with what's going on there. But very determined. They get a hold. It's almost like getting caught in a claw type thing. Getting rid of them is not so easy.
Yeah,
very
apparently
interesting
so.
element.
We're going to hear all about this tonight. It's a fascinating topic.
I can't wait to have Dr. Gallagher on the show with us.
I know.
Going over some information from him. It's just mind-boggling to think what's been out there that so many people try to ignore or act like it doesn't exist. Wow. Wrong.
I know.
Exists.
Time people wake up to the reality of this, that's for sure. And thank God for Dr. Gallagher that he has the kind of courage that it takes to share his experiences and his understanding of this with the rest of the world. So let me introduce everybody to Dr. Gallagher. He is an American board-certified psychiatrist. He's a professor of psychiatry at New York Medical College and also on the faculty of the Columbia University Psychoanalytic Institute, where he trained as an analyst. Now, Dr. Gallagher is quite a prodigy as a child, and all of his genius he brings to our show tonight. He is a magna cum laude graduate, Phi Beta Kappa graduate of Princeton University, where he studied the classics and won the Class Scholarship Prize in Ancient Latin and Greek. And he also played professional basketball in Europe. He's a tall guy. He trained in psychiatry also at Yale University. So I could go on and on here. He is an amazing man. He's written widely and given many talks, including on TV and radio and documentaries on the topic of diabolic possession. And he's writing a book. It is called Demonic Foes, a Psychiatrist Investigates Demonic Possession in the Modern United States. We are honored to have Dr. Gallagher with us tonight. So, Dr. Gallagher, welcome to the show.
Well, thank you very much, and it's a pleasure to be here, and thank you for that kind introduction.
Well,
we've been waiting with bated breath to get a chance to talk with you, that's for sure.
I know. Now, I was reading about you. I know PK's been reading about you. We're reading articles about your childhood. Sounded absolutely idyllic. Was it?
Well, I don't think anybody's childhood is completely idyllic, but I came from a nice, loving Irish Catholic family in the suburbs of New York. So we played a lot of sports as kids, and I certainly had. I was very fortunate to have very caring, loving, intelligent parents.
I guess it's a rarity. It's a rarity, I'll tell you. And so you went on to become a doctor, and you decided to specialize in psychiatry. What brought you to becoming a psychiatrist?
Growing up, I really didn't have any contact with psychiatrists, thankfully. But I got intrigued in college by reading, psychoanalytic literature and psychiatric literature, and I just really wanted to do something that both allowed me to, truly help people, as well as something I found intellectually interesting. And so eventually I was, able to, after my training at Yale, remain in academic psychiatry and treat a lot of people, but also kind of study things in the field of psychiatry and psychoanalysis. So it's been a very fulfilling life.
It sounds it. And now, did you go into private practice, or were you working with institutions?
Well, both. As I worked for Cornell Medical College for a while, and I'm still on the faculty at Columbia. My main academic position at the moment is at New York Medical College in Westchester County, New York, north of the city. But all the while, I do academic stuff and writing and some research and certainly a lot of teaching. I've also been able to have a very busy private practice, so I think I've had the best of both worlds.
You certainly have. Now, yes, it just sounds great. Now, for you in your practice, do you find that you have any? I know you have a multiple levels of diagnoses to work with people. Any particular disorders that you find populate your patients? Schizophrenia, bipolar.
Well, I mostly treat adult patients. So I will see a spectrum of patients with serious mental illness like schizophrenia or serious depressions, bipolar illness. When I was at Cornell, I was very involved. They had a program for individuals with severe personality disorders like bipolar disorders. So I've really treated a wide spectrum of adult patients, and that too, I think, makes the field more interesting. And you see a wide variety of different types of problems. Again, that's been very fulfilling that I'm able to work with a wide variety of patients rather than just one patient group.
Exactly. And it's interesting.
There seems to have been an overabundance of bipolar at today's versus what it has been in the past. Because I keep hearing so many different groups that they're talking about, and they keep referring to the bipolar more than anything else I'm hearing at this point in time. Is it more profoundly evident now than it was before?
Well, like everything else, there are controversies about that. I think certainly, as opposed to when I first went into the field, Americans now tend to diagnose bipolar much more frequently than they did in those days. In those days, in the early days, 30 years ago or so, an awful lot of people were getting diagnosed as schizophrenic who are now diagnosed as bipolar. And a lot of young people too who have sort of variable moods are being diagnosed as bipolar. There is a body of opinion that thinks it may be getting overdiagnosed now, especially in younger people. Mm-hmm. But these are kind of academic controversies that very intelligent people have different opinions about. I think in young people it may be a little overdiagnosed, but it's a common illness. It's much more common than, say, schizophrenia, and so there is no question that there's a lot of people who do suffer from it.
If a parent is bipolar, does it stand that the child or a child of the mother would be more prone to be bipolar?
More prone.
I don't.
Yeah, which doesn't mean it's always the case.
Right.
The genetic component of severe mental illness is not trivial, but it's not always determinative. There usually are a variety of factors, biological and even psychological, which contribute to even the severest of mental illnesses. Mm-hmm. So these are complicated phenomena that draw from biological factors, psychological factors, sometimes cultural factors.
Interesting.
It's
Now,
just incredible how much is out there for us to learn from, and that's available to us to learn today that was so secretive in the past.
That's probably true. Yeah.
Yeah,
I think people are a little more open-minded about these things, and we have these are still difficult conditions to suffer from, but we have made some advances.
Thank God. Well, that's a good thing. Now, how did you come to understand something about the world of exorcism? What was your introduction to this?
Well, I sort of had an academic interest to a degree in it. When I was at Princeton, I basically studied ancient literature. I studied, the Greek writers and the Latin poets, and I studied biblical scholarship. And so I became interested kind of in the history of philosophy and the history of religion. And so I certainly was aware that throughout history, people have reported things like this. And as I got into psychiatry, I began to ask questions of myself, mainly, so does this stuff seem to be psychiatric patients? Is this cultural misconceptions, or are there true supernatural and even demonic phenomena? And so I had some interest in studying these things even before I finished, medical school. And then, lo and behold, after I got out of medical school, after I got out of my residency, rather, at Yale, pretty much to my surprise, and I'm still not exactly sure why I was asked, because almost everything I've done in this area, it's not something I really went out and sought or volunteered for, but maybe people thought, I had an open mind about this stuff. I am a Catholic, so I'm sure that contributed to why people may have been open to consulting me about some of these very odd cases that appeared to at least some people to be possibly demonic. So people would consult me. Again, I didn't volunteer, and I became more and more more and more I studied these phenomena in depth so that I could help people. I mean, that's really why I got involved in this. It was not theoretical. It was just to help people who felt they might be suffering from this stuff. By that I mean demonic attacks. And, I obviously kind of concluded what one might expect, that these phenomena of true demonic attacks were rare, and that many, many people more commonly were suffering from some kind of medical or psychiatric illness. And so people came to rely on me to help sort out, the one from the other.
It's incredible to take a look at how things have changed, so people are starting to look and be more open to understanding and working with some of the subjects that you're talking about now.
I think that's true. In the old days of the early psychoanalysts, it was a very secular mentality, and there were even people, including Freud, who were quite hostile to religion and spirituality. Although it's interesting that some of those early psychoanalysts, like Carl Jung as well as Freud, had some interest in weird phenomena that they would call paranormal, and traditionally had been labeled either demonic or supernatural. So people were aware of those phenomena, but they didn't really accept the traditional explanation for them, and they tended to pathologize them and say, well, these must be individuals who are mentally or physically sick. And that's an understandable reaction, because psychiatrists often see people who only imagine or only think they're being who only think they're being demonically attacked. They may hear a voice and they may say, well, the devil is speaking to me, or something of that sort. And we as doctors, and throughout history, doctors were always consulted, by the way, about these cases. This is not something new. But the doctors, tend to conclude about a case like that, well, this individual is psychotic. This individual is out of touch with reality, and this individual maybe has a diagnosis of schizophrenia or bipolar or something along those lines. And it probably is true that, people began to think, well, maybe all these traditional phenomena are basically just illnesses. But as I often tell people, then there are the exceptions, and they are more rare than mental illness. But I say to people, do you really think psychiatric patients can levitate, can all of a sudden speak foreign languages? And obviously, patients medically or mentally troubled can't do that. So there's got to be some other explanation for some of these admittedly rare cases.
So you spend a lot of time, it sounds like, talking people out of thinking that they are possessed when they really just need traditional medical treatments. But you do have these rare cases. And you've been personally involved with an amazing case. And we've got to get into this one, because some things happened that you witnessed that there was no explanation for other than this was paranormal, right?
Absolutely. Do you want me to talk about that now?
Let's go there, because I know the audience is just dying to hear about this. This is so fascinating that it happened to you, and you were brought into this particular case. I mean,
I'm sorry. Again, it started out in a very typical way, in the sense that this was not a patient of mine. I mean, none of these individual cases of true demonic attack were patients of mine. So this was a woman who a priest exorcist who knew me or knew of me wanted me to consult upon. And it was a remarkable case. I mean, it was, even in the words of the exorcist, the chief exorcist, who later publicly verified this on a radio program, actually. In his words, and he was incredibly experienced, in his words, this was the most dramatic demonic possession case he saw in his whole life. And I was introduced to her by what in effect was his assistant, another exorcist. So there were two exorcists involved in this case. I'll call the one his assistant. And his assistant introduced me to her. And the night before I met her, it's the first time I met her, my wife and I were in our bedroom in our house, and at 3 a.m. we had a number of pets, and we had two cats who just went absolutely berserk. I mean, they were relatively placid cats, well-behaved for cats, and they used to get along with each other, and they kind of curled themselves up next to each other on our bed in the bedroom. And about 3 a.m. they just went berserk. And I looked at my wife and I said, what is this? I mean, did they have something to eat, or did they grab a hold of some catnip or something? We'd never seen it, and we actually had to separate the two. And I didn't really think that much of it until the next morning when I got introduced to this woman who the assistant exorcist said he was going to introduce me to because he wanted my opinion about. And the first words out of her mouth, remarkable to say, the first words out of her mouth to me was, "Well, Dr. Gallagher, nice to meet you. And by the way, how did you like those cats last night?"
Oh my God!
Oh my goodness!
That's an absolute true story. In fact, I even have I even have a letter from her where this is the quote from the letter. She wrote it to someone else, but I have the letter, and she said, "Well, Dr. Gallagher seems like a nice, sincere man with an open mind. We did raise a little hell in his house a few weeks ago." So that was a pretty remarkable story. And again, how do you explain this? This is not mental illness,
No, you're right. Yeah.
Yeah. And then a few weeks later, I tell another story. A few weeks later, I was actually on a telephone line, one of the old landlines with the exorcist, because he had wanted me to see if I could attend one of her exorcisms, which they had been planning. And I had already spent some time with her. In fact, we were driving in a car with her, the assistant exorcist and myself, and she was in the back seat of the car at the time. And all of a sudden, she goes into essentially a trance state. And out of her mouth come these incredibly vile comments, almost all to the effect of the following, in a slightly different voice, although it was clearly coming, through her vocal cords. It wasn't a disembodied type of voice. So, and the voice would say things like, I'll have to censor it a little bit, but it was,
"Yeah,
we said leave her alone, you effing priest. She's ours." And that was a fair summation of the dialogue, and it was mostly directed against the priest. And she also called him "you monkey priest," which I thought was interesting that she would pick that term, because to me it indicates what demonic spirits think about human beings. They think we're just monkeys. So
that's news to me.
Yeah. And well, it was obviously sarcastic, but I'm saying there was obviously some point behind it. And then I said to her when she came out of this state, I said, "Well, Julia, that's a pseudonym I've given her when I've written about her." I said, "Julia, do you remember what just happened?" And she goes, "No, why are we in a different neighborhood now? What happened?" And it was explained to her that she had gone into this trance and this voice came out of her, which she knew. I mean, that's why she had come to the priest in the first place for help, because she knew she was possessed. I mean, she had no doubt about it. But to get back to my conversation over the phone with this assistant exorcist, he's trying to convince me to attend one of the exorcisms if I could. And, I was a busy guy, I had a family, etc. So, I really couldn't go to the exorcism, and I had to tell him that. But in the middle of our phone conversation, while this woman was approximately 1,000 miles away, she had gone back home. We obviously knew where she lived. She was not in the area. This was not a cell phone. She couldn't come in over the landline. That same voice came in over the phone, and the voice said, you effing priest, we said to leave her alone. She belongs to us. And I was pretty taken aback by this. And I said to the priest, the priest exorcist who was the assistant, I said, did you hear that? He goes, yeah, this is a really, really, really dramatic case. So these things happen. So he took it with a little bit of aplomb because this had occurred to him before. So again, there were these paranormal stuff. I'll tell you one more quick example. She had the paranormal ability. I mean, we would say the demonic ability, but people in today's world like to use a neutral term like paranormal. She had the paranormal ability, which is called remote viewing. In other words, it's the ability that certain psychic people have of being able to see things from a distance. So she had told me that. She told me about that power that she felt she had several times. I probably should preface it by saying this was a very committed Satanist. She was a high priestess of a satanic cult. She called herself the queen of a satanic cult. Now,
wow.
I don't see Satanists lurking behind every corner. Just as demonic possession is rare, Satanism is rare. But people are naive if they think there is none of this. There are a few Satanists, and they feel that in part they get certain privileges from Satan, including psychic abilities or paranormal powers. So she had often bragged to me that she had this power of being able to see things from a distance. So I was always a little skeptical of it. So she said, "Well, Dr. Gallagher, I can see the chief exorcist." Now this was a different guy. This is probably the most experienced exorcist, in my opinion, in American history. And she said, "I can see the guy." And I said, "What do you mean you can see the guy? I mean he's 50 miles away." She said, "No, I can see him." I said, "Okay." I don't think I said Miss Smarty Pants, but that was my attitude. I said, tell me. So she goes, "Well, he's walking along the beach, and he's saying his daily prayers." And I said, "And what is he dressed in?" She said he's dressed in khakis, and he has a windbreaker on. I said, "What color?" "Blue." So I said, "Well, I'll tell you what I'm going to do, Julia. I'm going to call him up." He had a cell phone, and this time, I had my cell phone, and I called him up, and I said, Father A. He used to call himself Father A because he didn't like using his name with anybody. Certainly not with Satanists. So he said, I said, hi, Father, this is Rich Gallagher. What are you doing? And, he took it like as a friendly question, and he said, well, I'm saying my breviary, which is the prayers that Catholic priests say every day. I'm saying my breviary at the beach. He said, I usually say it in my own home, but I decided to take a walk along the beach. And I said, well, and what are you wearing? And he said, I have on my khakis, and I it's a little cool, so I put on my windbreaker. And I said, and what color is the windbreaker? And he goes, oh, I know what's going on. He said, you're talking to Julia, right? And I said, yeah, that's exactly right. And I said, I still want to know what color is your windbreaker. And he goes, it's blue. And then I remember what he said to me. He said she is something else, isn't she? So these are the kinds of things that this was a more dramatic case than the usual. During her exorcism, she spoke foreign languages, or the entity possessing her spoke foreign languages while she was in a trance. All kinds of weird things happened in the room. I didn't go to this exorcism, but this is about 8 or 9 people described it to me, and I hardly think that they were all just, making things up. And right. Remarkably, during one of these exorcisms, which I had been invited to but couldn't go to, about 7 or 8 people swore that she levitated off the chair in which she was undergoing the exorcism for about 30 minutes. And that's not the only case of levitation I've heard. I've heard from a number of priests and a number of victims. I'm going to call them victims of possession. Exactly the same thing. Now, people often say, well, it was an optical illusion, or these people are lying, or blah, blah, blah. I mean, after a while, when you hear these kinds of stories from hundreds and hundreds of people, I've been at meetings in Europe where there is 300 or 400 exorcists, all of whom have similar stories, although, some of them are more reluctant to speak out. You begin to say, well, these things obviously exist.
They certainly
and
do.
that is my impression. These things obviously exist. You want to put a different interpretation on them, fine, but to me, they're obviously evil spirits.
And we agree with you. We think you're absolutely right. You have an accurate assessment of the situation, and certainly you have the skills to be able to determine, is this mental illness and does it need to be treated medically, or is this, in fact, possession? So you're right. One of those rare people who do that, which is so valuable, and I know you really do want to help people. That's obvious. And now let me ask you a question about this woman that you call Julia. In these exorcisms, did she ever identify what had taken control of her? Did she have a demonic name that she gave to the exorcist in the room and said, this is so-and-so, or not?
Yeah, she did. And again, this was she wasn't a highly educated woman, but she was a pretty sharp lady. And, she was with it, and she had no history of mental illness or anything. And she told me, she said, I know I'm possessed, and I don't like it. And I said, Julia, why are you possessed, do you think? And she said, I know, because I'm a Satanist. I worship Satan. And so she knew she was possessed. She knew that this demon or demons, sometimes it's hard to tell. And she did have some, names for who she thought was possessing her. I don't tend to believe a word that demons say, so, I never quite know if they're giving accurate information or not. But, clearly they identified themselves as demons who were possessing her. And she would be in a trance at the time, so it was only afterwards that people would tell her that. But, she was certainly darn sure that she was possessed and she wanted to get rid of this possession. That was her goal. That's why she agreed to see the priest.
And did she turn up with, I know there's a lot of stories about people that are possessed and they have scratches on their body, that they lose their appetite, they stop eating. Was any of that going on with her or not?
Well, she felt a little protected, actually, because she had devoted herself to Satan. So she didn't quite have that. She had some unpleasant experiences. For instance, she told me once that she felt Satan would punish her with fire, which was kind of interesting if you think about it. And she did at times feel that she was in a great deal of pain. So she had different phenomena. I mean, a lot of possessions are different than each other. I mean, there are some common features. The traditional criteria essentially involve the witnessing of a entity, a creature, who not only hates religion and all spiritual things, so you'll see a lot of cursing and complaining about anything sacred or religious, but also who has some powers of a separate entity. So this is why you get, and I've seen this, I've heard this myself many times, demons either speaking in or understanding a foreign language. That I've witnessed myself directly many times because I've been to many exorcisms. And they also often know things about people that they obviously wouldn't know. For instance, Julia knew exactly how my mother died, which was of ovarian cancer. And she told me that once. And, you know, people say, well, maybe she looked it up or something. I mean, it's kind of absurd that she would look it up. But even if you believe that, she knew how 15 other people's mothers or parents had died. So, you know, she wasn't going to libraries looking up this information. So she clearly had possession of what's sometimes called in Latin latra, meaning hidden knowledge about things. You know, she could see people at a distance. She could, you know, struggle for hours and hours against the exorcism. She levitated. She spoke foreign languages during the exorcism. You know, what does this indicate? Well, it indicates that there's a supernormal creature involved. You know, human beings can't do that stuff. And people sometimes throw out these theories, well, you know, the amazing capacities of the human mind. Yeah, well, how come we don't see it otherwise? People, you know, humans don't have those powers. Spirits do. And so, you know, you're clearly dealing with a spirit. And the traditional criteria of hidden knowledge and foreign languages and all this stuff, what it really indicates is there is a separate spiritual being who is, you know, being engaged in these exorcisms, and that's the criteria. You know, people
Makes
sometimes
sense.
have them. Yeah. I was just going to say, people sometimes have the mistaken impression. You know, well, this is all intuitive, or this is all, you know, mumbo jumbo. I mean, at least most of the soundest exorcists and clergy members, you know, they insist on very strict criteria. They're not just pulling this discernment out of their hat. And these are the kind of criteria that you see over and over again in these people who are possessed.
Do they take out multiple personalities at any time?
I'm sorry, I didn't quite hear you.
I said, do they at times take out multiple personalities?
Well, again, that's one of the things you have to distinguish. You know, genuine cases of possession where there is this personality, and there could even be several personalities because there may be more than one demon. But it's, in my experience, and again, you know, I happen clinically to be a very experienced psychiatrist, so I've seen, you know, scores of cases of so-called multiple personality, which we now call dissociative identity disorder. They're not the same. I mean, you know, the people with dissociative identity disorders, you know, often they've been abused, not always, but often. And, you know, their personality is kind of split, you might say psychoanalytically, this represents different sides of a disturbed personality, and it's quite clear that that's a very different thing than what we're talking about here. Okay. Again, I've seen, over 100 cases of so-called multiple personality disorder, which in itself is a controversial diagnosis for various reasons. But I've seen many of those cases, and I've certainly never seen any of them speak foreign languages or levitate or anything like that. Mm-hmm. So, again, these are the kinds of criteria following which you can clearly distinguish the two things.
And what about the strength? Because I know that's something that I also saw in some of the articles about your work, that priests, exorcists have seen people that have this incredible strength that they just can't explain. I know in one article they talked about a very small woman in stature, 90 pounds, who threw a 200-pound priest across the room. So is that one of the things you look at?
That may have been something I reported on, because I knew a woman who was, again, clearly possessed, and she was dealing with her Protestant minister. I think it was a deacon, actually, Lutheran deacon. And they really didn't take, they didn't have much experience in working with these cases, so they really didn't take very much in the way of precautions. They felt she was possessed, and they were doing some kind of, deliverance ritual. And all of a sudden, the demon, took over the 90-pound soaking wet woman, and she attacked the deacon and threw him across the room, and he was about 200 pounds. So, wow. those things happen. And again, there other stuff too. This is a woman who, eventually requested an exorcism of a Catholic priest, and the Catholic priest was saying some Latin prayers, and I was at that exorcism, and it was quite clear that this woman, who hadn't been brought up Catholic, didn't know Latin, had never studied languages, she was clearly following the prayers, and she was commenting on it sarcastically in English. So the priest would say, credo in unum Deum, I believe in one God, and the woman would say, I sure don't, in English. So sometimes the possessing spirit will speak the foreign language themselves. I remember talking to a Bulgarian, an exorcist of a Bulgarian background, and he said to me, this spirit was speaking fluent Bulgarian to me, even though the woman had no connection with Bulgaria. In this case of this particular woman, because it was the same woman who much to his surprise, tossed the Lutheran deacon across the room, and she was also the one who was commenting sarcastically on the Latin prayers. What will happen is the person may speak the language themselves, and I've heard demons speak Latin, ancient Greek. They can speak all languages, actually, because they're very intelligent. They've been around for millennia, and they like to show off, I think. In this case, this woman was not speaking the language, but clearly was understanding it, and that you'll see that a lot too. That they understand prayers of a different, faith tradition, or if they're in, yeah.
What do you think these demons are? I mean, can you give us some insight as to what these things are that come and take over a person's body like this? What are these things?
Well, again, not everybody's going to agree with me, but I'm absolutely convinced these are fallen angels. That these are angels who went bad. Angels are like human beings. I mean, some of them have turned to God and goodness, and some of them have turned to evil. I mean, there's Mother Teresa's in the world, and there's Hitler's in the world. Human beings have the freedom to choose, and the presumption is, at some point in prehistory or whatever, angels had freedom of choice. Some of them chose to follow God. Some of them chose to rebel. And, they're kind of corrupted and sadistic and mean-spirited. And some people think they hate God and they hate the fact that human beings can still turn to God. And so they hate kind of humans' ability to love and to turn to God, and they want to attack us and destroy us. I think that's the best explanation.
Yeah, I like that, and also, the way they taunt the priests and the exorcists is just incredible. I mean, their level of sadism, as you mentioned, is quite high.
It's sadism. It's sadism. I mean, as a psychoanalyst, I understand that certain human beings are very sadistic, and human beings get some kind of pleasure or perverse satisfaction out of sadism. And again, these demons are the same. I guess they don't have too much fun in life, but they can get their jollies a little bit at trying to destroy human beings, presumably under some kind of authority, and traditionally that's been thought to be the authority of Satan.
Now, what is it that, as you look at these people that have had this very rare experience, do you think that there's a commonality in their personalities that kind of draws this demon to them? There's something about these people that you can draw, the.
Well, a lot of people can get attacked by evil spirits. And again, this is not just, reported in Christian history. This has been reported all throughout history, all religions. There was a famous German professor. His name was Traugott Osterreich. And about 100 years ago, he wrote probably the magisterial text on possession. And, it's found in all cultures. Anthropologists report these things. The ancient Greeks reported it. It's reported in underdeveloped areas of the world as well as in the modern world, which is what I write about in my book, Demonic Foes, which, if I can mention, it's going to be published probably in the fall by Harper Collins. But so these phenomena are kind of found in all cultures, and then there are lesser types of demonic attack too, not just possessions. People have different terms for them: oppression, vexation, And, very good people can, often as they actually try to become very holy or something, they may get attacked. But they don't get possessed. The people who get possessed tend to be the people who have explicitly turned to evil and occult forces. Now, obviously, the classic example is the one I just talked about, Julia. She was a Satanist. That's why she became possessed. In a way, she brought the possession on herself. But other people who have, I remember talking to a criminal. He was a gangster, and he had done a lot of very evil things in his life. He was in jail for quite a while. And, he told me that when he was young, he had turned to different occult powers that he thought would make him more successful. And in a sense, he, compromised his being by saying, you make me the richest gangster, and the gangster with the most women and the best cars, and you can have me. Dark forces, as he understood them, and he became possessed. His wife did tell me that she saw him levitate and speak Latin, and so he was clearly possessed. And that, in some ways, is kind of the modal way that in which in which somebody becomes possessed. They've turned to evil. They've turned to, dark forces, which they may not even be aware of what they're really doing. But in effect, they're turning to the demonic world or evil spirits, and then they get in over their head and they're possessed. It just doesn't happen. It doesn't go around happen to your average person.
Right. There's something that allows them to crack into that world, and that world comes rushing forward to take them. But it must
because they have opened themselves up to it. Usually
they have. Yes,
and
exactly.
Turned to evil, and turned to sin, and turned to evil.
Right. And it sounds like it's coming with people that have a sense of profound powerlessness, and they want to be powerful, so that they then call this energy to them so that they feel whatever they need to feel powerful.
I would agree with that. That's certainly one scenario. But, there are other people who just, they want to be king of the hill. They're not happy being a gangster. They want to be the chief gangster. So they'll pray to these darker powers. Some of the South American, gangs have been very involved with turning to Satanism. MS-13, for instance, is widely known for having occult rituals, which they feel protects them. And so I guess you could say, a sense of powerlessness. But I think people's motives for turning to evil is mixed. Different motives.
I would agree. Absolutely. PK, did you have a question?
Yeah, I was wondering, when they turn to the evil side of it, can they I shouldn't say justify. When they turn to the evil side of it, they build that up to give it more power. Once they start that, how do they get, if they wish to, how do they get out of it?
Well, the most important thing, because people can think exorcism is a magic ceremony. It's not a magic ceremony. This is not like a witch doctor. The prayers of exorcisms can be quite helpful, but the person to renounce the evil themselves. Mm-hmm. And part of why they may turn to an exorcism is they may well want to renounce evil, but they also have to develop themselves spiritually. They have to turn to prayer and to God, and to often religious practice is very, very helpful, and they have to renounce it. The reason Julia was never delivered, was never truly exorcised, is because she never did that. She wanted an exorcism. In medicine we call, people want the magic bullet, They may have a mental illness and they just want that magic pill that's going to cure everything. It doesn't work that way. Medications are very helpful, sometimes indispensable, but still the person has to kind of work at their underlying psychological problems. It's the exact same with on the spiritual level. These people have to work on themselves spiritually, and if they don't turn away from Satanism, and Julia never fully turned away from Satanism, what did she expect? She's not going to be freed, and she wasn't freed. We think she died in a state of possession.
How sad.
What happens? Does anybody have a sense of what happens to these people if they die in a state of possession? Are they just taken under?
Again, the teaching of the church is that at some point you can be possessed and really want to get rid of it. It just doesn't happen while you're still alive. So, we never judge anybody. We don't know how God judges these people. I mean, maybe the possession is, in a way, part of their trial or punishment for their evil ways earlier in their life or something. So, we don't give up hope for anybody. We leave that up to God.
Oh, that's wonderful. Yes, wonderful. Well, we're going to take a very short commercial break. I even hate to do this because I'm so fascinated By everything you're saying, Dr. Gallagher, we are so grateful that you've come on the show tonight to share this with everybody. You're a very, very special person to do this type of work so successfully. So we're going to come back in just a few minutes, everybody, and stay tuned.
Are you ready for a new experience of freedom and powerful connection? Would you like a positive, effortless change in your life? Then come to CosmicFusion.com, where we offer the most advanced energy clearing and expansion techniques in the world, with a quantum vortex energy to activate your divine blueprint and life's purpose. When your soul leads the way with cosmic fusion and quantum vortex energy, you can break clear of past difficulties and blocks with the power of the Source. With Cosmic Fusion, the Source energy does the work for you. It's easy and effortless. Listen to our free meditation right from our Cosmic Fusion website, the Cosmic Code Meditation. Sign up for one of our interactive webinars today. Come to Cosmic Fusion, www.KOSMICfusion.com, to experience an effortless awakening and transformation. Are you ready for an upgrade? Are you ready for a new experience of living in the fifth dimensional magic and powerful connection? Then visit CosmicFusion.com today. CosmicFusion.com.
Your property tax bill. Have you seen it lately? It's frightening. Your property taxes are going up while your home value is going down. It's time to fight back and win. For the real truth about the property tax system, get attorney Pat Quintilian's book, Are You Getting Screwed on Your Property Taxes? How to Find Out and How to Fix It. Attorney Quintilian answers all your questions and gives you the facts you need to fight a property tax bill that is spiraling out of control. You'll also read about what happens to property owners who don't check their property records, only to find out too late they're taxed on square footage, fixtures, and even buildings that they don't own. Is this happening to you? Learn your rights. Buy attorney Pat Quintilian's book today. Are You Getting Screwed on Your Property Taxes? How to Find Out and How to Fix It. Available on Amazon.com.
Astridian is a family of cosmetic products with 98% pure ionized minerals. We combine our science with a blend of essential oils to nourish and take care of your skin's health. How does it work? All Astridian products contain the proprietary redox technology, having the capability of simulating an ionic zinc-copper superoxide dismutase effect. This free radical scavenger currently in your body has been diminished by toxins and the daily stresses of life. It is a perfectly balanced mineral complex that all $200 an hour dermatologists, their professors, and ancient history have proven. Redox technology is a process of reducing the skin's oxidation by transferring electrons from a radical state to a stress-free normal condition. Oxidative stress is a form of cellular aging, and as science has proven, a precursor to disease. The free radical theory of aging states that organisms age because cells accumulate free radical damage over time. Damaged cells are not beautiful, but healthy cells are. The Astridian family is presented in 4 different uses that cover unique benefits to your body. They are the Essential Anti-Aging Series, the Multivitamin Series, Sports Series, and Professional Series. Regain your youth with the power of Astridian. Visit www.astridian.com and inquire. Use the code SUPERNATURAL and receive a 10% discount on your first purchase. Astridian, the beauty of being healthy.
Welcome back, everyone, to Supernatural Girls Radio. I'm your host, Patricia Baker. I'm here with my co-host, PK, and our incredible guest tonight. We're so honored to have him with us. This is Dr. Richard Gallagher. He is an American board-certified psychiatrist. He has a new book coming out in the fall, which I know we cannot wait to get our hands on. It's called Demonic Foes. A psychiatrist investigates demonic possession in the modern United States. And we are learning so much tonight about the world of exorcism and possession. Now, Dr. Gallagher, what's the success rate with exorcists? How many times do you see that work or not? I mean, give us some idea of the success on it.
Well, look, as I'm sure you can appreciate, it's a little hard to quantify that sort of thing. But I would say most people who follow through with the spiritual advice they're given, in addition to agreeing to the exorcisms, because it does really require a whole spiritual journey. It's not just the magic prayers of the exorcism. As I've said, exorcism is not magic. It's part of a spiritual effort to free the individual, but that also takes the cooperation of the individual, as was certainly evidenced by Julia's case. And most of the people who really work at it and who follow the guidelines given to them, they are delivered. Most. It can take. I've seen people who are delivered in a very, very short amount of time, and then other cases may take much, much longer.
Mm-hmm. It's just this whole field is so amazing, and I hear that the Catholic Church is actually training more exorcists. Is that true?
Yeah, I think in part because there's now so much attention about these sort of things that a lot of people, who may not be possessed or thinking they're possessed, and they're importuning the church for help. So there needs to be more people to meet that need. Again, possession itself is quite rare, and it should always be kept in mind. It should not be diagnosed lightly.
Now, I have some questions that have popped up in the chat room for you, and somebody would like to know, in your experience with people that have been possessed, have you ever been afraid? Have you ever felt fear in the presence of someone who is possessed by a demon?
Well, I'd put it a little bit differently. I mean, I've certainly had a creepy feeling. I've certainly had a feeling of, in some senses, boy, this is really weird, and this is, in some cases, repugnant. I certainly don't, brag about my own state of mind or anything, but, I do practice my faith, and I kind of feel I'm on the winning side. So, I think we're supposed to have confidence. We're not supposed to cringe in fear of these things if we ourselves are, turning to our Lord and asking His help and protection. So, as a whole, I think by this point, I've had an unusually high level of experience, because even a lot of exorcists, they're kind of tied to their diocese or their area, so they don't really see that many cases, whereas for better or for worse, because people have consulted me from all over the world, and because originally there were very few exorcists in the United States, so I would see many, many cases as they would travel around the country. I've seen so many cases now in my life, even if they're rare in themselves, that I kind of just take it for granted at this point. Although I also would not do this work unless I had a lot of people praying for me. I just wouldn't do it.
Do you find that men or women may be more prone to this?
There are some people who think that. I'm not sure. I've certainly seen a lot of possessed men. I mentioned that gangster a little while ago. He was certainly a very macho guy. So it can happen, to both genders. I don't know. In psychiatry, we realize that women are more prone to ask for help. So it may be that the cases that people see or hear about are more often women, because women more often may seek help. Although, for some reason, God knows why, there are other, experts who think somehow women are attacked, more often. So Those are kinds of interesting questions that I'm not sure anybody really has the definitive answer.
Is there anything a person could wear that would, say, negate a demonic possession?
I'm not sure I understand the question. Could you just say it again?
Sometimes a person wears different spiritual medals or things of that nature. Is there something a person could wear that would be more protective for them of a demonic?
I think almost all kinds of religious practices are helpful. One doesn't want to be simplistic or superstitious about it, but I think if in good faith, you attend church and pray and take advantage of religious paraphernalia of one sort or another. I think that stuff is all somewhat protective. But again, I don't want to give people the impression that some good religious person is likely to just all of a sudden get possessed. That doesn't tend to happen. That doesn't mean, by the way, that even good people can't be attacked in some way, but it's much more minor attacks than possession.
And what about people that has anybody died during exorcism? That's a question from the chat room also. Has anybody passed away in undergoing something like this?
I've certainly never seen it, and I don't normally think that would be likely. Now there are people who practice exorcism who are untrained, people who may be confused themselves, and people who may use ridiculous techniques like trying to beat an evil spirit out of someone. Those are often lay people. Those are not often trained clergy who are conducting those things. So there are certainly reports of abuses of exorcism. I mean, no spirit is going to leave because of violence. If violence is used in exorcisms, it's a perversion, and it's also ineffective. These are spiritual problems. They have to be dealt with by spiritual means. So if properly conducted, and a lot of these people, if they're in bad health or something, they need to be checked out by a physician, even for their physical health. It's unlikely to happen in a properly conducted exorcism, although I've heard of abuses where people by ignorant practitioners may have caused real harm to the individual physically because they don't know what they're doing. And in pagan cultures where, they also try to do exorcisms, often they use, very primitive, dangerous methods which have no place in this field.
That's a very good point, and I'm glad you brought that up. Absolutely important. So
definitely nothing to play with.
Right.
No, you have to have this training and the skills to be able to handle this appropriately. Now,
I would just say, just to follow up on that, you have to be very intelligent and use strict criteria. You're not just intuiting that people are possessed and then, doing something about it. I mean, people sometimes say, is this anti-scientific? Well, of course it's not anti-scientific. This is, I believe in demonic possession, not because of, preconceptions or intuition or something. I believe because I've seen very clear evidence. And in fact, if you look throughout history, people sometimes find this hard to believe. The evidence for genuine demonic possession is actually very powerful. It's massive. It's been available in documents for centuries. And it's also not, people sometimes say, well, isn't it a kind of a fringe belief? Well, it may be a fringe belief in your subculture, but it's not a fringe belief in history. Or in America, for that matter. These phenomena have been reported throughout all history. including by, many professional anthropologists. 70% of Americans believe in the devil, and a majority believe in demonic activity. A majority of Americans believe in demonic activity, the possibility of demonic attacks. So I sometimes say to people, who's out of the mainstream here, I don't regard myself as out of the mainstream. I don't regard this as a fringe belief. I regard this as a common belief throughout all history.
Very good point. Yes, point well taken. I love that. That's perfect. Now, what about the movie that brought it all into our consciousness in contemporary culture, The Exorcist? Do you know anything about the real case, about what happened? Because it was based on a true story.
Yeah, there's some dispute, and like human nature being what it is, there's disputes about everything, right? You never get unanimity, but this appears to have been based on a case, and a fair amount is now known about it, of a case from Maryland. It was a boy, and he was involved in the occult in some sort of way, and then very weird paranormal phenomena occurred in his house, according to one person's report, witnessed by about 50 people. And then eventually he became possessed. He was treated by different religious groups, eventually came to the attention of Catholic priests who had a difficult time with him. And in fact, it wasn't until at least some long period later where he eventually had successful exorcisms out in St. Louis and was delivered, and then went on to lead a very normal life. Now, again, like everything else, human beings being what they are, some people challenge that story, but I think the facts are actually, as they've been presented to me, and I knew a priest who had some involvement in one of the cases, one of the exorcisms. I think that's a credible report of a exorcism that the author Blatty took and modeled and changed around a little bit, and made it the girl Reagan in the movie. He also based it on some other historical exorcism, so it wasn't all based on this one case.
It's a great movie, that's for sure, and it brought that all into our consciousness. That's for sure. I'll never forget that movie. What about
No, I think it actually had. Especially for a movie, it had a widespread cultural impact, unusual for a movie. Now, for good and evil, for good and bad, because on the one hand, it maybe alerted people to the possible reality of these phenomena and the way to address them, but it also probably made some vulnerable people exaggerate the amount of these cases that actually exist.
And what about the Emily
nothing in life is simple, right?
No,
that's for sure.
That's right, but that's why you're here, to help us understand all of this. Now, the Emily Rose case, was that based on a true story also?
Oh, absolutely. That was based on a German case of, 40 years ago or so, I think. And it was the case of it. Again, the facts of that case are also disputed, but a lot of them are fairly well known facts. It was a woman named Anneliese Michel, who, certainly she and her parents and a number of priests in Germany at the time thought that she was possessed. And, I've seen evidence. I've talked to Europeans who knew the case directly, and they all tell me that that's what they believed and still believe. What was unfortunate in that case, in my opinion, is that Anneliese did not, and her family did not trust doctors. And she fasted. I think she thought that she should fast. And unfortunately, she died because of that before she was delivered. And the priests, the two German priests who were involved, actually were convicted of a crime. Now, they got off, with probation. They didn't serve time in prison. I think that happened because the family and the victim herself, Annalise Michel, didn't want anything to do with doctors and didn't want to go to a hospital, although she clearly had some medical problems. And so as she kind of slowly starved herself to death from the fasting, somebody should have intervened. Well, somebody should have intervened. You know, somebody should have forced her, and that was the tragedy. I mean, I had a case once where this guy, he was not possessed, but he was demonically attacked in more minor ways, and he told me that he was convinced he shouldn't eat. And again, this was not a patient of mine, but I said to his family, I said, you know, he's not eating. You got to get him into a hospital. And they put him into a hospital, and his life was saved.
Oh, my God. Oh, that's wonderful.
So, you know, what I'm saying is, you know, you need to use your common sense. People need to use their common sense. And, you know, like a lot of human beings, you know, they get certain fixed ideas in their head. This is what God wants me to do or something. Well, God doesn't want you to starve to death. So,
no.
You know, you have to use your common sense. And if this is another reason why, you know, physicians should be involved in these cases, at least as consultants, because, you know, things can happen if people neglect, you know, common sense in their health. And that's what I think happened. That's what I think happened in the Annalise case. I think she and her family so mistrusted doctors who, you know, I'm sure were telling her, you know, your daughter's schizophrenic or whatever, that, you know, they didn't want to seek any medical help or hospitalization when it was clearly needed. It was a tragedy, and it was also a tragedy because, you know, it became a notorious case, and a lot of the German hierarchy wouldn't allow exorcisms for many years. Yeah.
You find that people are more prone to look into it at this point in time as they have more so than in the past?
Well, I think so, and I think the impact of all the movies and television shows about this stuff has had that effect that people no longer think it's quite so strange or uncommon as they would have, say, you know, when I was a kid. But on the other hand, again, that can be good, but that can also, you know, cause problems. Nothing in life is simple because you don't want everybody who, especially people with mental illness, you know, you don't want them all thinking, oh my God, all I need is an exorcist. I mean, that's, you know, that can become a real danger because then they neglect getting the medical or psychiatric help they need, and they just want some magic answer. And that happens.
So,
that happens a lot.
What do you recommend for somebody who thinks that this is happening to them? What would be a kind of a step-by-step for healing?
Well, the best thing would be to consult, you know, whatever their religion, to consult a knowledgeable clergy member that they can find who can help them to evaluate it, and also to find, you know, a truly open-minded physician. And if those people need to talk to each other, they should talk to each other and help discern, you know, whether this is a medical illness, a psychiatric problem, or something truly demonic. You need that. You know, reliance on people with experience, whether it's clergy or medical people. Who have some experience in this area, and I'm not the only one, and then to take it from there, and then they need to realize, you know, it's not, you know, to reemphasize once again, it's not a magic ceremony, you know, it's not an incantation where all their problems are going to go away. They have to work at it too, and by that I mean they have to use the ordinary means of spiritual help, you know, religious practices, prayer, etc., etc.
Right, that makes sense. Now,
it's a process. It doesn't happen overnight. It's a process.
Right.
And they have to be prepared to recognize this is a complex phenomena. It's a spiritual problem, and they have to then use the proper medical and religious expertise to help get them out of that.
Right. Now, there were two people mentioned in an article I was reading about you that were also, I don't know if they were psychiatrists or psychologists, but they didn't believe in any of this. And yet they treated somebody who was possessed. And in fact, they each went back to their respective residences and had the same types of paranormal events happening. Are you familiar with this and what happened to them?
Well, I'm not sure I know exactly what you're referring to. I would say about the critics of these things, they really haven't seen these cases. I mean, you mentioned that something happened in these cases to these people, but most of the time, the people who are critics, in my experience, have simply never seen a case, or perhaps, even more strikingly, they've never even spoken to an experienced exorcist. I mean, there are exorcists in this country, who speak out publicly. I'll mention two of them. There's Father Thomas in California, and there's Father Lampert in this country. The only reason I mention their names, because I almost never mention anybody's names, is because they have publicly spoken out. So I go to this meeting, in Europe every couple of years, and, there's hundreds of these people. There are probably, a few thousand in the whole world. I mean, if you're going to criticize these cases, just make sure you speak to these people and actually evaluate the evidence without just drawing a preconception. Now, admittedly, many psychiatrists are skeptical because they're dealing with deluded patients or patients who are hallucinating the voice of a devil or something. So, they tend to overgeneralize. But if you're gonna claim that you know better than everybody else, and that all this stuff is a load of nonsense, well, at least you should try to see a genuine case or speak to people who have genuine experience. And in my opinion, the critics just repeat the same tired arguments over and over again. They say, well, these people who are given hidden knowledge are just cold readers, this sort of thing. They're just reading people like the Mentalist in that TV show. It's kind of absurd. I myself have talked to many people who, give me all kinds of information that there's just no possible way they could have guessed this stuff. You think this woman could look at my face and say, well, your mother died of ovarian cancer? I mean, it's just it's just implausible. It's implausible.
Right. That's right.
But did you have another point about those people that you were referring to?
They were non-believers. They were skeptical, and then they had this case. And I guess what was happening is they were each going to their respective homes, and the same events were happening, lights going on and off, drawers opening by themselves and closing by themselves. And when they started talking to each other about it, they were shocked to learn that each of them had experienced the same things separately, and that's what turned them around.
Yeah, no, I have heard of situations like that, and yet other people, I think they never learn even from, weird experiences like that. So it's a complicated world, and, I believe in freedom of religion, and people have their own views about these things. What I just do find is that when I've talked to the real sort of doctrinaire critics, they've simply never seen a case, or they expect you to have like this evidence that is unrealistic. I mean, they'll often say, well, I won't believe it until there's a videotape. Well, right. Evil spirits are not going to perform for the camera. They're smart. They're not like some exhibitionist Hollywood actor who's ready to exhibit themselves. I mean, after all, they spend a lot of time both attacking people but also kind of hiding and confusing people. I mean, they're inveterate liars. They confuse people. They're not just going to demonstrate for a videotape to be presented on YouTube. It just so I think it's quite naive. I mean, in my opinion, I would never videotape anybody because it's a violation of privacy. But there have been people who've tried to do that, and sometimes later the tape turns out to be blank. But you have to. You can't expect that type of evidence. But you could talk to hundreds and hundreds of people. These people are not hiding under rocks. You can talk to hundreds of exorcists or just good-hearted lay people who have witnessed these things, and those people are perfectly willing to talk to people.
Exactly. And these demons, they seem to like working under the cover of darkness. So of course they're not going to exactly do what you just said.
Yeah, it's strange because, as people point out, sometimes they make themselves manifest and sometimes they don't. So, they seem to hide. I mean, the famous quote from the French poet Baudelaire was, "The devil's greatest trick is to convince people he doesn't exist." So that seems to coexist at the same time that for some people they certainly do manifest themselves.
Yes, exactly. Exactly.
It's all part of a great mystery that we to quote a famous passage, we see through the glass darkly.
We do, but thank goodness that you have this high level of training, Dr. Gallagher, so that you have the best of both worlds here between your spiritual practice and understanding and also your medical training. I mean, you have the best of both worlds here to really take this on and make it more understandable to people that have open minds. I mean, I can't wait for this book. I know, PK, you and I are going to be the first ones in line to get it, right? I mean, this isn't about...
Well, if you want, when the book comes out, you can have me on your show again.
Oh, we definitely will, Dr. Gallagher, because this has been such a great hour and a half with you. We can't thank you enough. I mean, really, for coming on and
you asked good questions, and I hope it was enlightening to some of your audience. It's like anything else. This is not a simple subject, but when you really understand how massive the evidence is, you realize we need to have intelligent dialogue about it.
We definitely do. We know that this stuff exists. I mean, our show is all about bringing this to consciousness so that people can look at this differently and realize that we are affected oftentimes by the darker forces. But we need to start identifying what is, and that's where you come in. It's just been delightful having you here. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you, and again, I appreciate that you allow such a lengthy, open-minded forum.
Well, it's our pleasure, really. And again, the name of your new book is Demonic Foes. A Psychiatrist Investigates Demonic Possession in the Modern United States. It is published by Harper Collins. It will be out in the fall. And I know our entire audience is going to be waiting for this. And we would love to have you back when the book is out, Dr. Gallagher. Thank you so very much for coming on the show tonight. It's been our pleasure.
You're very welcome. Thank you.
Yes, well, thank you. We'll be back in touch for sure. Now, everybody, be sure to go to our Facebook page, follow us on Facebook, sign up for our newsletter, The Fringe Files, so that you can keep track of all the things that we are doing. Next week, it's UFOs again. We will be talking about ECETI Ranch, where quite a few phenomena tend to happen quite often. You don't want to miss it. So again, everybody, thanks for joining us. This has been a great show. And until next week, we will see you on the Blue Highway. Good night, everybody.
Good night.
Thanks for listening. Tune in next week for another radio adventure with Supernatural Girls.
we miss our video?
I know, but it's okay. That's why when I hear in blacks, I just go back and wait. We know it's going to be back and forth for a bit, so don't sweat it. I don't.
Well,
it is for the now.
I'd love to get the video going again. It's so much easier when I can see you, you know?
I know. Oh, for both of us.
I know it. So we got to find a way to do that again. That would be very helpful. All right. We'll talk to you soon.
Yep. Okay, honey. Bye-bye. Have a good night. Bye-bye.
You too.